When I was about 12, I got to experience Final Fantasy VII for the first time, and I was completely entranced with it. I was blown away by the gaming experience, and I will never forget the moment that I heard One Winged Angel for the first time. I was completely moved. My mom actually made me turn off the PlayStation when I got to One Winged Angel because I kept telling her just a few more minutes, so that was kind of poorly timed, but that meant that I got to hear One Winged Angel more than once. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy VII's music, as compared to like what I've heard from the rest of Final Fantasy's epic like multi-game scores, I would say that Final Fantasy VII was paramount for me to open my eyes and experience what would eventually become a career in opera. Final Fantasy I directly attribute to my personal success with opera and my personal journey into music. It really wasn't until Final Fantasy VIII that I locked into being a Final Fantasy music fan. I used to play Griever's theme and Ultimisia's Castle and Procession of Witches and Liberi Fatali and all this other stuff all the time. Balam Garden, Fisherman's Grotto, is that what it was called? Fisherman's Horizon. So many things, and it wasn't really until Final Fantasy IX that I fully locked in and became a complete and utter convert to what Final Fantasy music symbolizes. In fact, to this day, I would say that Final Fantasy IX is the soundtrack that I listen to the most. I used to have these CDs that I burned by a person named Diagoro at 7-4, I don't remember, and they were just very simple piano arrangements, nothing fancy, just piano versions of this music, and I used to listen to it everywhere we went. So a couple years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, before I became a YouTuber, I would look at the tours of Distant Worlds and just never believed that it would ever be something I could do because of time, because of commitments, because of responsibilities. And when this YouTube channel started, I decided to, treat myself to a fun little trip, and I went to experience my first Distant Worlds concert, and it was awe-inspiring. I remember I teared up, I cried, I was so emotional hearing these tunes from my favorite games come to life. And when this second concert came up and we were going to be having the first look at more Final Fantasy XIV music, but also the sort of unveiling of the arrangements for orchestra from Final Fantasy XVI, I had to go. As you know, I'm a bit of a Soken simp, if you will. I love Masayoshi Soken's music, and I feel like he is the natural sort of progression that from Uematsu. While there have been so many other incredible composers that have composed for other Final Fantasies like Yoko Shimomura and Hamauzu, Soken really feels like the sort of natural evolution of the soundscape of Uematsu with incredible fluid and florid melodies and wonderful pieces of intensity and excitement. And I am just so overjoyed that I've finally been able to hear his music with orchestra. I've always wondered how Soken's music would eventually sound with a full orchestra, and I have to say that Ascension and Away and Find the Flame were incredibly good with orchestra. The concert started with the Final Fantasy Prelude. It goes through all the different Final Fantasies and it sort of connects the dots for us over the last however many years that the series has been around, leading into Liberi Fatali, which hearing that with orchestra was really just next level cool. I'd never even considered that I could possibly hear Liberi Fatali with orchestra. And I think it's one of Uematsu's most classically based pieces that I think really lends itself to the classical stage incredibly well, to live performance incredibly well. After that, of course, we ended up with just a victory theme, sure. But then the battle with the Four Fiends, which I'm actually not a big fan of. But this particular arrangement of Battle with the Four Fiends was truly good. It was astounding. Now, it repeats quite a bit, and they did a really good job with dynamics and with rhythm, and with the back of the theater, there was a fantastic drum set player who was just absolutely annihilating the drums during this. It was really, really, really engrossing and fun to listen to, and actually it kind of boosted up a little bit in terms of my ideal music to listen to. It was so good to hear live. And of course that was followed by To Xanarkand, which was, I've heard that before with orchestra, and it's astounding. It's a piece that belongs really in an orchestra and really in any concert hall or venue. It's profound. And of course, that was followed by Vamos a Flamenco from Final Fantasy IX, one of my favorite tunes with the dance sequence, the battle sequence in the beginning of Final Fantasy IX with a live sort of flamenco guitarist. And that was just amazing. It was so good. I was so pleased. There were times where it wasn't really in sync. I think that part of it's really hard when you're following the track in front. The conductor was the incredibly talented Arnie Roth, and really just great conducting and crisp and precise. Though, you know, to coordinate between the video and the music and the soloist, it's hard. There's not a lot of room for wiggle, essentially, for error. So you really have to be on it at all times. And so I think like there were moments where I felt that the guitarist wanted to have a little bit of flexibility and couldn't, but that's just because of the nature of the thing. You can't really do anything there. Honestly, Song of Salt and Suffering, it's not a bad track, but it certainly wasn't. I don't think it was a very good choice for the concert. There were a lot of other options, I think, if we're going to do like world themes from Final Fantasy XIV. It's not that it's bad. It just didn't land. It felt like a little bit too long, and it kind of meandered around a lot, like you would in I think it would have been more interesting to do a medley of the different town themes or something, but Song of Salt and Suffering, I wasn't really a big fan of. And of course, Amanda Aachen sang Tomorrow and Flow, which were both, I mean, as amazing as you expect. Amanda's ability to both navigate between a jazz sort of soundscape plus a very operatic soundscape is really, really interesting. And it's her capacity for variety when it comes to musical styles is really, really bar none exceptional. It's very hard for those of us that are trained in classical singing to also be able to pivot to jazz. Now, of course, there's classical singers like Renee Fleming who have done jazz and studied jazz, and I'm sure Amanda studied jazz. So like she has a natural inclination for singing multiple different styles exceedingly well, and she really just delivered so beautifully, especially Tomorrow. And then we had the final day, which was astounding to hear live. Like, astounding. The choir was exceptional. It was really, really, really good. And it was just the right length and the right size. We didn't get With Hearts Aligned for the second half, but, I can sort of forgive that because the final day was so loud, it just reverberated along in the walls of Carnegie Hall. It was really, really, really exceptional. Then, of course, there was a Chocobo medley, which is cute and charming. It's fine. Final Fantasy VI, there were two because it was celebrating, I think, the 30th anniversary, if I recall. Searching for Friends kind of goes on a little bit too long for my taste. It's not bad, but I do think that like something like Terra's theme or any other theme really would have been a better choice. And then really the surprise of the night for me was to hear Dancing Mad, the full like symphonic piece with an organ in Carnegie Hall. It was exceptional. To me, Dancing Mad is really such an evolution of classical music and really an evolution of how to use organ as a main source of instrumentation. It's so hard to do, and it's so rare that we really get like an organ concerto. And Uematsu's piece translates exceptionally well to orchestral arrangement, and it exceeded all my expectations for what I thought it could possibly sound like. Really, Dancing Mad live was something that I think might be a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, and I was incredibly grateful for that. I'll probably never forget that. That was really like amazing. And it really, I think, also reminds me of how incredible Uematsu's compositional style is and how varied it is. And the very simplest amount of prog rock in there with the drum set near the last phase mixed in with just this incredibly well-written choral, essentially, piece with organ and orchestra. It really is an organ concerto. It's really, it can't be overstated how incredible that is. After that, there was Aerith's theme, which, you know, no one can deny. It was so clean, so well done, really beautiful with the dynamics there from the orchestra. And then Final Fantasy 15, Valsa di Fantastica, which is one of the best tracks from Final Fantasy 15. It actually made me want to go back and replay Final Fantasy 15, because it turns out that I'm a bit of an apologist for Final Fantasy 15. And despite a lot of the problems that 15 has, especially when it comes to its story or lack of thereof and its pacing, Final Fantasy 15's music is really exceptional, and I've always felt that way, and Shimomura just nails it. I mean, it's like really, I think, one of Shimomura's best works. Of course, so many works that she's done are really great, but I was really blown away by that. I was a bit sad there was no Lightning's theme or Lightning Returns or anything like that from Final Fantasy 13. I thought that would have been a really good opportunity, but the real star of the night was the Final Fantasy 16 tracks, Away, Ascension, My Star, and Find the Flame. I have to say, one of the big things that I really noticed that I actually thought was a detriment to these pieces was how long they were. Away, Ascension, and Find the Flame are incredible pieces of music. They are composed extremely well. Hearing the strings and the violins play Ascension was a dream come true for me. It is so much a Bach modernized version. It's like a style of Bach that I think Bach would have been completely like blown away by. There's an essence of Vivaldi in there. Hearing the movement of the strings, I mean, the concert master was phenomenal. But you know, I think the inherent problem with these 16 tracks is that they serve the drama and the gameplay almost too much. And so what I would hope and what I would like to see is a sort of rearrangement for an orchestral setting, because they kind of just went a bit too long without any real sense of direction. They just repeat. And I understand that those are certain limits, and that's, after all, video game music is to be written and accompanying drama, and a lot of the scenes in 16 are quite vast and big. But I would have said that was probably my biggest frustration, was there's like a whole middle section of Ascension that I feel like just falls flat without seeing Bahamut on the screen. And obviously Bahamut was on the screen because they have the projector in the back, but I just felt like, in terms of being like a song, these three in particular don't feel as buttoned up as some of the Uematsu pieces that we listened to, especially in the first half. Those pieces are really condensed and I guess that was my big complaint of Searching for Friends as well. It kind of just dragged on, and same with Battle with the Four Fiends. Like, those arrangements were just a little long for my taste. So that was something that I really noticed, but my goodness, these pieces, Away, Ascension, and My Star to a different degree, and Find the Flame, are just so powerful. And it was really interesting to hear them without any sort of synthesized soundscape, like in the studio, like really in their rawest, most pure form. And they really are just so well done. And I really would love to see the Eorzean Symphony come to the States and really get to hear more of Soken's music in an orchestral format, because I really do feel like his music is underrepresented because of the sheer amount of it, and because it's all done via, you know, the sort of done in studio. The orchestral arrangements of his works are really exceptional, and I think we need to celebrate those much, much more. And there needs to be more of an emphasis put on those pieces to be used with orchestra. Because one of the things that's really interesting is that when I first saw my first opera, I had been listening to it in my headphones for, you know, in the studio library, listening to operas. And so the action was all up close. But when you get into the hall, the singing is actually quite far away from you. And so the soundscape changes slightly. And there's a little bit of a letdown almost. But then you get used to it and you understand, like, no, this is how it's supposed to sound. The creation of albums and CDs and things that have sort of changed the way that we listen to music. There's almost an artificialization that gets lost when you listen to it live. And it almost creates a preconceived notion for what it should sound live. So you may actually be disappointed when you experience something live. Like Find the Flame is an amazing piece, but it didn't necessarily work as well as I would have liked it to, because I'm so used to hearing how tight it is in the game itself and in that particular album version. So it was really interesting to hear some of the natural capacity for players to play this fairly difficult music, or the sort of naked, stripped back sound that exists because that's just what an orchestra sounds like. We don't get some of the crunch or the heavy emphasis of drums or brass because it doesn't necessarily function the same way orchestrally. And I think that part of that is just the problem of living in a modern age where things are readily available, and also things are easily made on things that are not like a group of people that are living and breathing. And so I can sort of see the argument of, well, that's why going to see things live is really beneficial, because you get used to the true human experience of what it's like to watch and see people play, and also be a player on the stage, and so on and so forth. So really interesting stuff. I mean, I was really, really happy to hear Soken's music, and it was really quite good. I was really blown away, especially by Ascension, but that's also one of my favorite themes from the last 3 years. So, and then of course it ends with the Final Fantasy credits roll, and then of course we finish off with One Winged Angel, which is just so good. One Winged Angel is so good. It's really incredible how long that One Winged Angel has lived up to the sort of Final Fantasy hype, if you will, and how good it sounds orchestrated and arranged. It really is the fact that Uematsu borrowed so much of his inspiration from The Rite of Spring and Stravinsky, and how he puzzle pieced that particular work together. I mean, it's just it's a really astounding piece that, had it not become popular by the sort of gamer lexicon, and I think it really is one of the pieces that could truly live alongside a Carmina Burana in a program. Same with Liberi Fatali. I mean, these two pieces especially are just really, really astounding. And I do think that I was thinking back to Away, Ascension, and Find the Flame, and some of these pieces, especially Ascension, I would think could easily be tone poems that something like Richard Strauss would compose, or someone like Richard Strauss composed, or whatever. There's a real quality in there of telling a story. I just think that those pieces could have been cut up a little bit so that they flowed a little bit better as a singular song package, rather than how they normally are, which is serving the medium, right? So that's something that it's not a big deal, but it's just something that I noticed, and probably no one cares about that, but I certainly did. So overall, this felt like one of those once in a lifetime kinds of concerts, and I haven't been to something like that in so long. And also when I was performing, nothing was really once in a lifetime, because I mean, it's once in a lifetime in the sense that you're probably not going to perform with those same people ever again. So people change, the experience changes. So when you're there with the people that you're with for that moment, that is once in a lifetime. But in terms of Tosca is done by everybody, La Boheme is done by everybody, Carmen is done by everybody, that's not once in a lifetime. But this concert had an energy about it that was just so incredibly satisfying to be in the audience for. And I was just thrilled to be a part of it. And yeah, I feel so blessed to be able to have gone to 2 of these now, and I'd love to go to a third. And it's just incredible to hear this music live. Thank you to everybody who said hi. Thank you to everybody who was kind to me, that said hello. And yeah, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts with you. If you like this sort of stuff and you like Final Fantasy music, well, you're in the right place. So feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.